The morning after my brother got out of prison, I sat in the parking lot of a Tim Hortons on the edge of Mississauga and checked my banking app for the third time in an hour. Not because I was worried, because I needed to see it. 61美元. Sube. Every dollar accounted for. Every dollar mine. I drove home with a large double-double and told myself that things were finally going to be okay. I was wrong about that. My name is Claire. I'm 32 years old. I work as a registered nurse at Credit Valley Hospital. And for the last 4 years, I've been quietly, carefully, stubbornly saving for a down payment on a condo in Oakville. Not because Oakville is flashy, because it's 20 minutes from work. It has a trail along the lake. And most importantly, it is not my parents' house in Brampton, where I grew up sleeping in a bedroom with a door that didn't fully close and a family that treated my income like a shared resource I hadn't been consulted about. I need to tell you something about my family before the rest of this makes sense. My older brother Marcus is 5 years older than me. Growing up, Marcus was the kind of person that other people described as a lot of fun, which usually meant they didn't have to live with him. He borrowed things and didn't return them. He made promises and forgot them by morning. He was charming in the way that people are charming when they've never really had to be accountable to anyone. Because someone else was always quietly cleaning up behind them, that someone was usually me. And before me, it was our mother. And before her, it was our grandmother. And I think if you went back far enough, you'd find some exhausted woman in every generation of my family who kept the whole thing from falling apart, while Marcus's equivalent laughed at something on TV in the next room. When I was 26, Marcus was arrested. I won't go into everything, but it involved financial fraud, a business partner who lost a significant amount of money, and a series of decisions that Marcus made over about 18 months that I genuinely believe he never thought would catch up to him. He got 3 years. He served just under 2. While he was inside, my parents aged in a way that felt sudden. The way aging sometimes does, when something ruptures the ordinary timeline of a family. My father's back got worse. My mother developed anxiety that she managed by calling me every other day to discuss things she'd already told me the week before. I visited Marcus 4 times. I sent him books. I did not put money on his commissary account, which my mother considered cold, and I considered a boundary. And we disagreed about this quietly and consistently for almost 2 years. When he got out, I was cautiously glad. Not joyful. Not relieved. Cautiously glad. The way you feel when a long, difficult thing is finally over and you're not yet sure what it's left behind. The first week, my father called to tell me that Marcus was doing well, that he seemed humbled, that he was talking about getting into trades, maybe electrician school, maybe HVAC. I said that sounded good. I meant it. The second week, my mother called to ask if I could help Marcus get back on his feet. I said I was willing to help. I thought about covering a few months of his phone bill, maybe helping him get a used car if he found work. Something practical, something contained. I said I needed to know what specifically she was thinking. And she said she wasn't sure yet. And we left it there. I should have pushed harder on the specifics. 2 weeks after that conversation, my mother called again and asked if I would add her to my savings account. Not transfer money. Just add her name. She said it was for emergencies. She said that with my father's health, it would give her peace of mind to know she could access funds if something happened to me suddenly and she needed to cover arrangements. She said this gently and reasonably, and I remember that I was standing in the break room at the hospital eating a granola bar and I felt the granola bar go dry in my mouth. I said I would think about it. I should not have agreed. I know that now. But I want to explain something about the particular kind of pressure that exists in families like mine. Because I think if you've been in one, you know it. And if you haven't, the explanation matters. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. Nobody grabs you by the shoulders and threatens you. It's more like water. The way it finds every small opening. It was my mother's voice getting quieter when I said I'd think about it. Quieter in a way that communicated disappointment without saying a word. It was my father mentioning casually that I was the one they were counting on. It was the accumulated weight of being the dependable one. The nurse. The one who'd gotten out and built something. And the unspoken understanding that building something while your family struggled made you not just fortunate, but obligated. I added her name to the account. I told myself it was just a safeguard. I told myself she'd never actually use it without asking. She used it. I found out on a Tuesday morning in February, 5 weeks after I'd added her name. I was sitting in my car in the hospital parking lot before a 12-hour shift, running through my mental list of things I needed to do after work. And I opened my banking app out of habit. The way you do when you're about to start a long day and want to know the number is still there. The account showed a balance of $214. I sat very still for a moment. I opened the transaction history. There were 3 withdrawals, all made in the previous 4 days. One for $20,000, one for $20,000, and one for $21,400. All of it gone to the same external transfer. Every withdrawal was made through online banking using my mother's credentials. $61,400. Gone. I remember very clearly that I didn't react the way I expected. I didn't cry. I didn't call immediately. I sat in that parking lot for about 6 minutes. Engine running. Heat on. Looking at the number $214, the way you look at something that doesn't make grammatical sense. Turning it over. Waiting for it to resolve into something comprehensible. Then I called the bank. The representative was kind. She walked me through everything carefully and confirmed that all 3 transactions had been authorized by the joint account holder, which meant that legally, in terms of the immediate transaction, there was nothing irregular. She told me I could speak with a fraud specialist if I believed the account holder had exceeded any agreed-upon terms. She gave me a case number. She told me to have a good day. I thanked her, ended the call, and stared at the steering wheel. I was 40 minutes late for my shift. I'd never been late in 4 years. I called my mother from the hospital bathroom at around 11 in the morning. Standing in the stall with my scrubs on. Phone pressed to my ear. She answered on the second ring. She didn't pretend not to know why I was calling. I'll give her that. She said she'd been meaning to tell me. She said it had been urgent. That Marcus needed it. That he had debts from before he went in. Money he owed to people that she was vague about in a way that scared me. And she said she'd been terrified for months that something was going to happen if he didn't pay. She said the bank was going to foreclose on something. She said she didn't have any other options. I asked her when she was planning to tell me. She said soon. She said she knew I'd be upset. She said she was sorry. Then she said something that I've thought about almost every day since. She said, "Claire, you'll be okay. You're young. You make good money. You can start again." I held the phone and looked at the back of the stall door where someone had scratched something illegible into the paint. And I was quiet for long enough that my mother said my name twice. I said, "I have to go back to work." She said she loved me. I said I had to go. I finished the rest of that shift. 12 hours. I administered medication. I took vitals. I talked a scared elderly man through a procedure he was anxious about. I made notes. I handed off to the night team. I was present and professional, and on the drive home, I cried for about 20 minutes straight. Not from sadness exactly, but from the particular exhaustion of holding something enormous inside yourself for a full working day. When I got home, I sat down at my kitchen table with a pen and a yellow legal pad, and I wrote down every number I could think of. My monthly take-home after taxes and union dues, my rent, my car payment, my student loan balance, what I'd need to save each month, and how long it would take to rebuild $61. Zero at a realistic rate. I wrote it down because I needed the problem to be concrete and finite, rather than just a weight I was carrying. It would take me approximately 4.5 years to save the same amount again, assuming nothing went wrong. I also wrote down what I knew about my legal options. Adding someone to a joint account in Canada gives them equal access to the funds. There is no legal requirement that they consult you before making withdrawals. If there had been a written agreement, which there wasn't, I might have had civil recourse. Without one, I was looking at a very expensive legal process with an uncertain outcome. Suing my own mother, which would cost me money I no longer had for a result. I couldn't guarantee. I already knew this. I'd known it vaguely when I added her name, and I'd chosen to trust her anyway. And that was my mistake. And I sat with that for a long time. I didn't speak to my mother for 3 weeks. I didn't speak to Marcus at all. My father called once and left a voicemail in which he said he understood I was upset and that he hoped I would come around. And I listened to it twice and did not call back. My closest friend, Priya, who I've known since nursing school, and who has watched my family from a careful distance for over a decade, came over on the Saturday after it happened with Thai food from the place we both liked on Queen Street, and she sat across from me at my kitchen table and listened while I went through all of it. At the end, she didn't say anything immediately. She let it sit. Then she said, "What do you want to do? Not what are you going to do? What do you want to do?" I told her I wanted to rebuild. I told her I wanted to be meticulous about it. I told her I wanted a space that belonged to me, that my name was the only name on where I made every single decision. She nodded like that was the most sensible thing she'd ever heard. The following Monday, I called the bank and removed my mother's name from the account. I opened a new savings account under only my name at a different institution. I set up automatic transfers on payday. A fixed amount moved before I could think about it. I called the nurses' union to ask about any financial assistance programs for members experiencing hardship, and found a small emergency fund I hadn't known about that helped me cover my rent for 2 months while I recalibrated. I did not confront Marcus. I thought about it many times. I rehearsed conversations in my head in the shower, in the car, at 2 in the morning when I should have been asleep. But every version of that conversation ended the same way, with me having said what I needed to say and him having nodded and found a way to make it about himself. And I realized that the confrontation was more for some imagined version of him than for me. And I let it go. What I did instead was simpler and more devastating. I stopped. I stopped answering calls on the first ring. I stopped volunteering to solve problems that weren't mine. I stopped explaining my choices or preemptively apologizing for them. I stopped performing the role of the one who holds everything together. Because I'd been doing it since I was about 12 years old, and it had left me sitting in a hospital parking lot at 6:40 in the morning staring at $214 in a savings account. I'd spent 4 years building I stopped. And the world didn't end. My mother called more often at first. Then, less. Marcus, from what I gathered, had found work through a reintegration program, something in warehouse logistics in Etobicoke. I hoped it worked out for him. I genuinely did. But I stopped hoping for it on his behalf, which is a different thing entirely. 14 months after that February morning in the parking lot, I was approved for a mortgage, not in Oakville that had shifted out of reach with the market and my reset timeline. Instead, a 1-bedroom in Hamilton, in a building near the escarpment with big east-facing windows and original hardwood floors in the living room, and a small balcony where I put 2 chairs and a planter that I have been slowly filling with herbs. The down payment was smaller than I'd planned. The commute is longer. It's mine. I signed the papers on a Thursday afternoon at a lawyer's office on King Street. The lawyer had a rubber plant on his windowsill that needed watering. And outside the window, the city was doing its ordinary Thursday afternoon things. And I sat across from him and signed my name in 11 places and walked out into the gray March air with a folder of documents under my arm, and I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, not quite knowing what to do with myself. I called Priya. She screamed. I didn't call my parents that day. I told them a few weeks later. Matter-of-factly. When my mother asked what I'd been up to, my mother said congratulations and that she was glad I was settled. She did not apologize. I had stopped waiting for that. There is something I want to say to anyone who is in the place I was in. Not advice exactly. Because I don't think advice is what you need when someone you trusted has taken something from you. More like a thing I learned. You are allowed to love people and still not let them hold the account number. You are allowed to care about your family's well-being and still decide that their emergencies are not automatically your financial obligations. You are allowed to grieve the version of your family. You thought you had the version where adding your mother's name to an account was just a formality, just a precaution, just a small gesture of trust, and then fold that grief up quietly and put it somewhere it doesn't take up the whole room. And you are allowed to start over. Carefully. Methodically. With a spreadsheet and a new bank and a savings account that has exactly one name on it, the balcony faces east. On the mornings, I don't have an early shift. I sit out there with a coffee before the street gets loud. And I watch the light come over the escarpment. In that particular way, it does when the sky is mostly cloud, but not entirely. Pale, yellow at the edges, and gray everywhere else. And I think about the person who spent 4 years saving toward something, and the person who had to start again, and how they are the same person. And how neither of them broke. It's mine. The balcony. The hardwood. The herbs that are finally starting to come in. The quiet. Mine. You'll be okay. My mother said. I am.